Matthew chapter 25, verse 46, there is a very short but familiar verse. Matthew 25, verse 46. If you're using the app, it's already there for you. Word says, "And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal." Again, it says, "And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal." We'd like to reason with you very briefly from the thought, a tourist's guide to heaven and hell. A tourist's guide to heaven and hell. It's Halloween time, so everybody's going to be doing hellish stuff. So this is a good time to talk about hell. Have you ever browsed a tourist guide? Some cities, to attract tourists, they prepare something called a brochure, and in that brochure they highlight all of the places of interest in the community. They've hired people like Keita to come in and and they must pay a lot of money if they hire him. That people come in to take pictures and colorful pictures to make it look real good, to capture your imagination and make you want to come to their locality. A tourist guide focuses on elements that are needed for sightseeing. It includes birth sites, memorials, museums, landmarks, and some people plan their trips around the little brochures that they get. In addition, a lot of the cities have websites, and on those websites they promote every imaginable aspect of their culture, and they have maps, they give you directions, and any other information you need that you might want to come to a various location. And just like they have guides that'll tell you all the great things about cities, there are some guides that also out there who tell you what cities not to go to. And these are what they call the worst cities lists. And they have every year, CBS, CNN, they'll put out this list of the worst cities to live in or to visit. And they probably will be because they have high crime or high unemployment, political unrest in the government, racial and gender discrimination, high poverty, and a lot of other reasons they would say this is not a good place to go. And so tourists usually try to avoid those places because they're not considered safe. Well, what about believers? Is there a tourist guide to the place that we want to go or to the place that we want to avoid? Every believer in this room expects to go to heaven one day, and that's our hope. We expect to get there. And if you're not intending to go to heaven, you're wasting your time coming to church. You're wasting your time praying. You're wasting your time having belief. If that's not your ultimate goal, we want to see the holy city. I mean, it's better than Atlanta. Atlanta, known as the city of brotherly love. It's better than St. Louis, which is supposed to be the gateway into the new place. It's better because it is the gateway to paradise. Those who sing "Got Georgia on Your Mind," when you start thinking about heaven, you start singing "I Got Heaven on My Mind." The church markets this great city to every potential client and every potential member and every potential partner. We try to tell people about heaven. We tell them that it's the right place for them to go, and that there's plenty of lodging in heaven. We tell you that everybody's going to have a mansion there. We tell everybody to come and go with us to heaven. There's going to be good weather there, for the storms of your life will have passed. There will always be plenty of good things to do. There will be wholesome, uplifting, and constant praise of God, plenty of fellowship, plenty of fun, plenty of praise. There'll be no need for a MasterCard or a Visa or American Express because everything in the city will be free of charge. There'll be no bills, no bill collectors or bankruptcies. So we like to think about that place. And the church has a tourist guide, we call it the Bible, which kind of tells us about this place called heaven. But at the same time, the place has another, the church has another tourist guide. And that's about a place called hell. Now, hell will be just the opposite of heaven. It won't be a paradise. It offers no benefits whatsoever. And the main residents will be the devil and those who follow him. Now, many people look at the two tourist guides and they find themselves in the position of the pimp who was a good fellow in his neighborhood. He went out and he helped every now and then. He would buy turkeys and give out to the people in the neighborhood. Folk liked this pimp. He was pretty good. But then one day he got hit by a car. And since he did show up at church every now and then, you know, instantly he was up at the pearly gates. And the angels were scratching their head. They said, we don't know what to do. We got a pimp up here, you know. What are we supposed to do? And he says, we ain't never had a pimp up here before. So the angel said, well, I tell you what we do. We said, let's give him these two tourist guides. And so we're going to let you go, and we're going to let you, since you did come to church and bring some of your women with you when you came, we're going to give you a chance to check out heaven, and we're going to give you a chance to check out hell. And you just take these brochures with you and you go down. And so they put him on the elevator and they carried him down, and he went down and he went down, and then his temperature started going up. He went down, and then it started getting cool. And then when they opened the doors, he stepped out on nice green grass. He saw the prettiest women he'd ever seen in his life. They came and picked him up in a nice fine stretch limousine that had diamonds on the rims. The music was bumping, and man, they put him in. Inside, he had food. He had ribs and chicken wings. Oh, he was, man, barbecue all over everywhere. He was feeling real good. And he said he was meeting all the folk. The women came up to him and kissed him and everything. He was feeling real good. He had a great time. He played dominoes. He played bid whist, and he laughed and cracked jokes, and he had a great time. And he even got a chance to meet the devil himself. And the devil was a cool-looking fella. He had on a nice red zoot suit, some white shoes, and the chain was swinging. And he just felt like, well, man, this is pretty good. Before he knew it, the time had gone by. 24 hours had gone by. He put him on the elevator, and they carried him all the way up, and he started going up real high. When he got to the top, he opened the doors, and there he stepped out. It was a nice heavenly-looking place. It was pretty and white and clean. They played music, but he didn't understand none of those words. They were talking about praise and all that kind of stuff, so he didn't understand that. But they did serve him some angel food cake, and he got a chance to drink some punch, and he got a chance to, they gave him some nice, clean, white clothes to wear. He got a chance to meet some important people, but he didn't know who they were. They identified themselves as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but he didn't know who they were. But he wasn't familiar with all that, and he got a chance to meet the man J.C. himself. He had a great time. Before he knew it, the time was up. The angel said, well, You've seen everything in the tour guides, and you've seen it all now. He says, now you need to choose where you want to live. He says, well, you know, this heaven thing is pretty good, isn't it? White clothes and this pretty thing. He said, but I think I want to go to hell. He said, what? He said, well, as soon as he said it, that elevator started carrying him down. But instead of it getting cooler, it started getting warmer. And when he opened the door, instead of the fine grass, all he saw was a wasteland. He saw chicken bones laying everywhere. Everything was all tore up, beat up. All the folk looked like they were ragged and torn and wearied, and wasn't no big car to come and pick him up and all that. And the devil all of a sudden showed up. He wasn't dressed in a red suit with the white shoes. He was dressed like he was mean, coming to carry him away. He said, whoa, wait a minute here. He said, when I came here a few minutes ago, he said, look, this ain't the same place. He said, well, he said, when you came before, we were trying to recruit you. He said, but you're a resident now. Welcome to hell. Now, brothers, I don't think we need to depend upon the devil's tour guide. We know we have a tour guide, and it's called the Bible. And the Bible tells us what Christ's promises are for us. He promised us that he's going to make a place for us and that we're going to be with him. And we know that wherever Jesus is, that's where we intend to be. And we will be with him forever. Now, this chapter of Matthew finds Jesus talking about Judgment Day and talking about separation. And he explained the nature of the kingdom of heaven, and he basically started saying that about how things were going to be when it got to the end. Now, Jesus talked a whole lot about a lot of things. He talked about prayer. He talked about forgiveness. He talked about what to do. But he also talked a whole lot about heaven and hell. Well, in today's time, people don't talk about hell much because crowds don't come when you talk about hell. You ain't going to find Osteen talking about hell, T.D. Jakes, none of them. They don't talk about hell because that messes up the offering, you know. So they don't talk about hell none. So, but we have to tell you about hell because you're always thinking that everybody's going to go to heaven. Somebody ain't been to church in 40 years, you want to bring them up here and put them across the front so we can put them in heaven. It don't work that way. But we need to know about heaven and hell. And so Jesus started telling about it. And he started describing he gave several examples, but in the one that just precedes this 46th verse, he started saying that there would be a time coming when he would come back, and when he came back, he was going to separate the good from the bad, and he was going to separate. He was going to put one on his right side, called the sheep, and he was going to put the other one on his left side, and he's going to call them the goats, and he's going to tell them that when I was in jail, you visited me. When I was in jail, you wouldn't visit me. When I was in jail, you fed me. When I was in jail, you wouldn't feed me. When I was hungry, you wouldn't feed me. When I was down and out, you visited me, and you wouldn't visit me. And they're going to say, when do we do all this to you? And just before verse 46, you'll see him say, it says, whenever you did this to the least of these, then you did it also to me. Well, brothers and sisters, in that general day of judgment, Jesus started to describe some things, and he talked about and he detailed it here. But in the Bible, there are other descriptions of hell and heaven that we perhaps need to know about. Most of it is going to be in Revelation chapter 20, and in Revelation chapter 20, the ungodly will be judged according to their works. Now, you think that when you die, that's all it is. No, the ungodly is going to get up. They got to come up. I don't care how they screwed it down there and put it down to put the steel vault on top of it. Everybody got to come stand before the judgment bar. The ungodly got to come and stand before, and says that when they come, they will stand there and they will be judged according to their works. Now, Revelation 20 and 12 says that death and hell will give up all those who died. It doesn't matter how you died. If you got blowed up, if you got chewed up by jaws, it doesn't matter. You coming back to stand before the Lord. If you got decimated, it didn't matter how it happened, you will stand before God. Each person stands before God, and your record will be read, and then the book of life will be opened. Now, I always like to remind everybody that when they read Wright's record, he's going to be found guilty. And when they read January's record, no matter how many sermons he preached, he's going to be found guilty. And when they read Mike's record, no matter how good he tried, he's going to be found guilty. The only thing that's going to save everybody in this room is the grace of God. And so he opens up the book, says the 20th chapter, and he's going to look, you're going to be found guilty. Then he goes over and look in the other book. And when he looks in the other book, he looks down the list and looks for Wright. Woo! He found it. Hey. He looked for Reed. Yeah, I found it. And he looks for January. Yeah, he found it. He found Mitchell, and he found Roger, and he found everybody. Found you in the list, because that's the only thing that's going to save you, that our name is in the book of life. And it said, and those who were not found in the book of life. This is Revelation 20:12. He says, those who weren't found in the book of life, they shall be cast into the lake of fire. In the text, Jesus said those who are on his right would be ushered into heaven. Those on his left would be thrown into everlasting judgment, banishment from the presence and the grace of God, and never to be in his presence again. Now, therefore, there's two powerful thoughts that we need to make sure we understand before we leave today. And there are many who don't like to talk about this, but every so often we have to talk about it, so that you can remember that while we all like to talk about the goodness of God, and while we all like to talk about the beauty of heaven, that there's also a reality of hell, and it does exist. First, let's look at that tourist guide to hell. Let's look at it first. The Bible tells us certain truths about hell, and to get our terminology straight, there are at least three words that we talk about when we say hell, and we know which one we're talking about. Usually you talk about the word Sheol or the word Hades. That's interpreted hell, but that means the place of the dead. That's just a graveyard. That's Richwood Memorial and all those. That's the place of the dead. Sheol and Hades. One is Hebrew, one is Greek. But then there's a third word, which is Gehenna, and Gehenna refers to the place of fire and burning. And Jesus, when he made these references in Matthew, he was using the word Gehenna, or the place of fire, when he started talking about hell. When Jesus taught about casting Satan into hell, he was talking about going into that lake of fire, or the Gehenna, hell. So there are a few things you ought to know first about hell. First, number one, hell is a real place. It's not a condition. So you say, oh, Lord, I know I'm going to heaven because I'm going through hell down here. No, that's a condition. But we're talking about a place. Hell is a real place. Jesus describes hell as a place, and that it has been prepared. Yes, it has been prepared for the devil and all of his angels that follow after him. Secondly, you might want to note that hell is a place of torment. Luke 16:24 says, I am tormented in this flame, meaning and referring to the fact that they are being tormented in hell. And then Matthew 13:42 describes it as a furnace of fire. And then Revelation 14, verses 10 and 11 says, there is no rest there, day or night. Friends, those who go to hell will not be chilling out by the pool, drinking lemonade and chilling out and having a good time. It is not a good place to be. Hell is prepared for certain types of people. Revelation 19:20 says it has been prepared for Satan. It has been prepared for the beast. It has been prepared for the false prophet and those who worship his image. Then if you go over to Revelation 21:8, it goes further and lists the categories of people who have a place waiting for them in hell. Now, these are not the only ones. These are general categories, but of people who have a place waiting for you. Now, I hope my name ain't in that list. Hope your name ain't in that list. But Revelation 21:8 says the fearful got a place in hell. The unbelievers have a place in hell. The abominable, the murderers, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars, they shall have their part, and they will be put into the lake of fire and brimstone. Now, notice that unbelievers are included in this list, but not believers. Why is it that unbelievers would be in the list, but not believers? Because believers may have done some of the things in this list. But what believers did is they came to Christ and said, please forgive me for what I have done. And they asked the blood of Jesus to wipe their slate clean. So they will, even though they may have done, and even though I may have done, even though you may have done some of the things in that list, because of Christ, you will have a chance and your name will not be listed among those. Fourth thing that for you to consider about hell is that too much will be missing from hell. There will be no peace in hell. You're going to miss it. There will be no rest in hell. There will be no hope in hell. There's nothing for anyone to do in hell. There's no parties in hell. Don't fool yourself. They won't be juking down there in hell. They won't be down there slam dunking and shooting 2 points. You know, and there won't be no halftime and no full time. They won't be down there betting on the game and everything like that. They won't be doing that in hell. There is nothing. There is no opportunity to get the love of God while you are in hell. There's no chance for forgiveness in hell. For in the end, hell is prepared for us, for those who will not believe. Now, somebody would ask the question: will a loving God do that to his people? That's what the people who don't believe say. But if God is so loving, why would he do that to his people? Well, he's not going to do that to his people. He's going to do that to those folks that's not his people. And I suggest to you that after giving us warnings, after telling us about it, showing us the tourist guide, letting us know what's there, and I'm telling you that I'm preparing a place for you too, and you still choose to go there, he won't even have no thoughts at all about just go ahead and I'm sending you on where you're supposed to go. Yes, God has prepared it. Now, this is not Wright speaking. All over the Bible, God talks about hell. We don't like to talk about it. We like to believe it's only heaven. And if we go on a TV show, go touched by an angel, everybody gets an angel, everybody goes to heaven, and everybody, don't care how bad they were. They don't have to go to church, they don't have to be forgiven or anything. The angel always comes and blesses the ungodly people. They never repent, they never give God praise or anything. Now you know that's just TV. In the real world, what God has is blessings for those who are his people, and yes, he has a hell for those who are not. Now that's all in the tourist guide to hell. But then there's a second tourist guide, and that's the tourist guide to heaven. Now the Bible tells us certain truths about heaven. First, that heaven is a real place. Revelation 21:1 tells us that the New Jerusalem will come down out of heaven and set itself down upon the face of this earth. It will be this whole heavenly experience will be so grandeur, so big, so bold, so grand that God will have to change the whole way the world is made. The scripture says that I saw a new heaven and a new earth. He had to shift it all around again. Why? Because just the capital city of heaven is so big. The scriptures tell us it's 12,000 furlongs long. Well, that's Revelation 21:16. 12,000 furlongs long. That's 1,500 miles one way, 1,500 miles that way, 1,500 miles that way, and 1,500 miles back with walls that go 1,500 miles up. Now, that's big enough for everybody to have a mansion. That's big enough for everybody to have a mansion, and you can plant you some gold in the backyard if you want to. It's big. Heaven is going to be a big place in every direction. Now, those of you who like to live in a gated city, you're going to live in a gated city because it's going to have 12 gates to the city, gated and protected. Each one of those gates will be made out of a solid pearl. And there will be 12 gates to the city. So it's a real place. We're not talking about an imaginary place where people are going to be floating around like Casper the Friendly Ghost. We're talking about a real place where we sit down here on this earth. Now, those of you who singing that song, I'm going up a yonder, I'm going up a yonder. Well, if the New Jerusalem is coming down while you going up, you're going to be up and heaven going to be down here. Now, you got to read what the Bible says. Revelation 21 says that the New Jerusalem is coming down out of heaven and set itself up on the new earth that's been created. And while we are here, we will have a great... Now, that's just a capital city. That's not the whole heaven. That's just the capital city. That's like the Washington, D.C. of heaven. It is a great experience. The second thing for you to remember, that heaven is being prepared for a prepared people. Now, just like hell is being prepared for some folk, heaven is being prepared for some people. Jesus said, I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, ye may be also. And he said, well, look, if it wasn't so, I would have told you. but I'm going to make a place for you. That means he's preparing a heavenly place for us. But he's not preparing that for everyone, but for those who have been washed in the blood of the Lamb. Please listen to what I'm saying. He's not preparing it for those who are perfect, because there is nobody perfect. But for those who have been washed in the blood of the Lamb, which means it doesn't mean that you didn't make a mistake in the course of your life. It doesn't mean that you haven't lost your temper or did something that you were embarrassed about. But you came to Jesus, and he washed it clean, and he's preparing a place for you. You don't have to be perfect to go to heaven, but you do have to be faithful. You do have to be one who believes in Jesus Christ. Everyone, brothers and sisters, who's talking about going to heaven is not going there. Everybody who's singing about it is not going there. Now, there's a downside to heaven. And there is, I'm sorry, but some people are going to be kind of disappointed when they get to heaven. If you're a doctor, you ain't going to have no clients. It's a downside to being in heaven. If you're a doctor, if you're a fireman, you're going to be out of a job. If you're a policeman, you ain't going to have no job. If you, no matter what your position is, if you're a dentist, you forget it. If you sell eyeglasses, you're going to be out of business. And definitely, if you're a funeral director, you're going to close up. You ain't got no chance whatsoever. There's a downside for those who like doing what they're doing. There'll be no medicine, no pharmacists around. Why? Because in heaven, in the big city, there's going to be a tree sitting in the middle of the city that will bear 12 manner of fruit, and will bear it in its season, and its leaves will be good for the healing of the nation. So you ain't gonna need any pain medicine, any cancer treatments. You won't need any bursitis medicine or arthritis medicine. You won't need any blood pressure medicine. You won't have to go to dialysis or anything of this nature, because in that city, the healing powers will come from God himself. And Revelation 22:2 guarantees that. And brothers and sisters, those of you who've been trying to do ungodly things, I'm sorry, but there won't be nothing for you. There'll be no hot CDs to buy in heaven. There'll be no dime bags of dope for you to get. And there won't be any hot pork chops you can buy back of somebody's car. If you're looking for bootleg this and bootleg that, won't be nothing bootleg in heaven. Everything will be original. The upside of heaven is that there will be constant joy, happiness, peace. In heaven there will be reunions of the family members, reunions of friends. And somebody said, well, what will we look like? I don't know what we're going to look like. And anybody who tells you that, they just telling you a tale. We don't know, but we have some imaginations. What we know is that when Jesus came back, they recognized who he was. We know that he was able to walk through walls, because they were locked in their rooms, and he walked right through the walls. So in his immortal body, he was able to walk through walls, be recognized, and then he ate with the folk. So we know they're going to be eating, so I guess they're going to have some good food. Because we don't know what it's going to be like, but we know whatever it is, it's going to be fine. It's going to be glorious, because wherever Jesus is, it's going to be happy times. Now, if you need a tourist guide, the church provides you with that tourist guide. We don't put little pamphlets out with pretty color pictures in it, but we just give you the Bible, which is God's holy word. And finally, brothers and sisters, we've talked a lot about a tourist guide to heaven and hell. But, I don't need a tourist guide to heaven. I think I'm looking for a homeowner's guide. A tourist is a person that's looking around for a while and plans to leave. But a person who asks for a homeowner's guide is planning to stay for a while. A tourist might want to say, I'm going to walk around heaven all day. But a homeowner is planning to live throughout all eternity, and his song is not, I'm going to walk around heaven all day, but I got a new home over in glory. And it's mine, mine, mine. The homeowner's guide will tell you what you need to look for in your new home. This new home will sit on 12 foundations. It'll be a gated community with 12 gates, and each one made out of a solid pearl. You won't need to worry about the cost of living in this city, because we will have money will have no significance. Even the streets will be paved with gold. Your homeowner's guide will tell you where your new home will be located. We don't know too much about it, but we've heard about a place called heaven. We don't know where it is or what it's going to look like, but maybe that's why the old warriors were saying, I've heard of a land on a far away strand, the beautiful home of the soul, built by Jesus on high, where we never shall die. It's a land where we'll never grow old. The homeowner's guide will indicate that if you plan to live in that land, that you're going to need to get you a passport. Why? Because you live in this country, but in order to get to the next country, you got to have a passport. Well, whenever you try to go from one country to another, they're going to ask you when you get to the door, show your passport. Well, we're on our way to a place called heaven, and I say you got to have a passport. Well, why would you need a passport? A passport bears the picture of the traveler. It tells your identity. If you are a heavenly traveler, your passport identifies you as a child of the King. Every child of God can say without a doubt, I know I am a child of God. Although I move so slow, I've been washed in the blood of the crucified Lamb. I've been plunged beneath the fountain that flows from Emmanuel's veins. Not only does your passport tell who you are, but it tells where you come from. What all you've been through. If we show our passport, it'll tell where we come through. It'll say, I've been through rocks and mountains. I've been through many valleys. I've been through the meandering peaks of hard times. I've been through and survived the sweltering deserts of weakness. I can tell you that I've been through something. You ought to show your passport and say, I'm coming from down here on this earth, where I had to go through many risings and fallings. I have many tears to cry in the middle of the night. I can show my passport and tell you where I'm coming from and tell you where I'm going to. But not only that, brothers and sisters, your homeowner's guide will tell you where your new location will be. And not only that, it'll tell you where it'll be located. But there's another section of your homeowner's guide that's called closing costs. Well, if you're buying a house, there are some closing costs. You can tell, they can say your house is $75,000, but it doesn't include the closing costs. When you get ready to buy your house and you sit down to sign the papers, that's when you find out you got to pay for the credit report. You got to go and pay for the inspection fees. You got to pay for the attorney fees. You got to pay for the appraisals and escrow and deposits. That's called closing costs. Title searches and insurance and recording fees. All that's called closing costs. Somebody may have the $75,000 to buy the house, but when they get down to the closing costs, they find that they don't have enough money, and getting their new house might be a little out of range. Well, brothers and sisters, the spiritual homeowner's guide has a section called closing costs that can keep you out of heaven, out of your reach. Well, there's a few things that can keep heaven out of your reach. I've been drinking and gambling. It gets out of my reach. I've been adulterous. That gets heaven out of my reach. I found that I've been disobedient to God. It gets heaven out of my reach. And when I look at the closing costs, I find that I'm not able to pay. But when you look at the spiritual homeowner's guide, down there at the bottom, you see some initials written in blood. It says JPIA. Jesus paid it all. Down in Jerusalem, he picked up an old rugged cross. That's closing cross. When he picked up that cross and carried it up Golgotha's hill, that's closing cross. When they drove nails in his hand, that's closing cross. When he called out to his Father and said, Father, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's closing cause. When he said, it is finished, that is closing cause. When they took him down off the cross, buried him in a borrowed tomb, and he stayed there for 3 days and nights. Early Sunday morning, he rose up from the grave with all power in his hand, with a title that's marked, paid in full, paid in full, paid in full. I don't know about you, but I'm on my way. I'm on my way. I'm on my way. On my way. And somebody today may see the two tourist guides. And somebody today may say, yes, the devil has promised me a whole lot of stuff. I see his tourist guide. He told me that if I just follow him, that he'll give me prosperity, he'll give me big cars, he'll make me popular, he'll let me drink, he'll let me party, he'll let me dance, he'll let me do everything in his tourist guide. But we want to let you know that God has a tourist guide for you too. The tourist guide that he has for you is that if you will accept him, he will prepare a place for you. And don't believe nothing that the devil tells you, because he's got small print that he can't tell you.